me thank you for honoring the legacy of Barbara Jordan and keeping this, keeping her memory alive. Really appreciate it. So give it up to all the students here at LBJ. And look, you honor me by asking me to come and be here this afternoon. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that. There are several of my friends who are here this morning, and I appreciate them being here this morning. And then I served in the legislature for a number of years, and my office coordinator, Pam, is here. So I really feel honored. She's still serving in the legislature with the dean of the Texas House of State Representative Sophronia Thompson. So I'm just honored to be with you. Look, I'm delighted to be with everyone today for the LBJ School of Public Affairs Barbara Jordan National Forum. And I want to thank you for extending me the invitation. Barbara Jordan was someone who I grew up admiring, looking up to, certainly have benefited myself from her leadership. She grew up and was born and reared on the northeast side in 5th Ward. We referred to it as the Nickel. And I grew up on the northwest side, and we refer to it as the Fofo. Who said the Fofo? All right. Well, when you say the Fofo, you got me. And for those who are not familiar with the Fofo, it was the Studewood bus. I mean, the bus that came through from downtown that went through the community. I rode that bus for many, many years. And quite frankly, I grew up in a family similar, where we didn't have transportation. Dad died early. Mom was a maid at the Rice Hotel downtown, rearing 9 kids. So she was the CEO of the Turner household, my mom. And so I got back and forth from Acres Home to University of Houston on the Fofo. So that's how I made it through. But Barbara Jordan comes out of the 5th Ward, a graduate of Phyllis Wheatley, went to church in that area, then the Texas Southern, and then just continued to strive and made history. She went on to serve in the Texas Senate. In fact, was the first African-American to serve in the Texas Senate post-Reconstruction. Made her mark there. And then from the Texas Senate, she became the first African-American woman from a southern state to be elected to the United States House of Representatives. And I would tell you from the very beginning, she wasn't there long. We talked about it earlier. She was only there for 6 years. But she made her mark in a very short period of time. As I said to the student leaders when I met, there are some people in life who are sprinters. They come out the gate very quick, they run their race very fast, and they are impactful in their race. And then there are some people who are long distance runners. They come out the gate, but they have to run 1 lap, and then they have to run a 2nd lap, and they have to run a 3rd or a 4th. Barbara Jordan, in many ways, was a sprinter. What she did in a short period of time, we are still talking about it to this very day. There are other people, and I put myself in this category. I'm a long distance runner. I ran for mayor not once, not twice, but 3 times. And so I'm a long distance runner. But regardless of where you are chosen, find your purpose and live out your purpose. And if you do that, then everything else will follow. She loved Houston, and Houston revered her lifelong commitment to integrity and fighting for social justice. I'm proud to say that last year, the City of Houston's Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs announced a civic art commission for the Houston Public Library African American Library at the Gregory School, celebrating Congresswoman Jordan's life. We selected artists who will finish their work this year, and I invite you all to come see it when it opens. Barbara Jordan is such a legend, and the artwork created by these artists will bring forward the impact she had in defending the United States Constitution and representing the people in the 18th Congressional District. Jordan was a pioneer, a woman of many firsts, and seeing her image and her writings would keep her memory alive for generations to come. She has been gone for almost 3 decades, 26 years to be exact, but her legacy remains a beacon that guides many leaders today, including myself, in how to advocate on behalf of the people we represent. In fact, I would say that her presence is just as powerful today, while our country continues to confront the consequences related to the January 6th insurrection at the nation's capital. Can you imagine what Barbara Jordan, Congresswoman Jordan, would think as the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol moves forward despite attempts to undermine and erase from history one of the darkest days of our democracy? Can you imagine what she would say if she was sitting in the halls of Congress, a day that insurrectionists attempted to stop Congress' constitutional mandate to validate the presidential election and prevent a smooth transition of power? I was in college. I was a college sophomore in 1974 when Jordan gave the eloquent opening statement before the Judiciary Committee's impeachment hearing for Richard Nixon. Her words ignited a spark across the entire country as she spoke as a strong defender of the United States Constitution. She said, "My faith in the Constitution is whole. It is complete. It is total. And I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, the destruction of the Constitution." In 1976, while I was a student in law school, she became the first African American woman to deliver a keynote address at the Democratic National Convention. I have been in public service long enough to know the difference between a keynote speech that history remembers and a keynote speech the speakers wish history would forget. As she said in 1976, "A nation is formed by the willingness of each of us to share in the responsibility for upholding the common good. A government is invigorated when each of us is willing to participate in shaping the future of our great nation." Then in 1992, I was serving in the Texas House of Representatives when she gave her final speech before a national political audience, when she was invited for the second time to the Democratic Convention to be their keynote speaker. And this time, she talked about a change from what to what. It doesn't mean a whole lot just to make a change. The change is what you are changing from and what you're going to. And while in her remarks during the Watergate hearing that got a lot of attention, Jordan must also be remembered for co-sponsoring bills to help seniors, children, and the homeless. She once said, and something that I've always remembered, she said, "What the people want is very, very simple. They want an America as good as its promise." As we assemble today, many would agree that America yet has not lived fully up to its promise. Our country is more divided, polarized, and the economic disparities, the disparities in education and housing and healthcare are very evident. But yet, though she is not here, we are here. And our purpose, in part, in all of us, individually and collectively, is to make America as good as its promise. Even in the city of Houston, the life expectancy can vary by more than 24 years between neighboring zip codes. close to the nickel, Fifth Ward, where she grew up. In that zip code, people, even in the city of Houston, their life expectancy is 24 years less than the neighboring zip codes. For those persons, they are still looking for America to be as good as its promise. And when you're living in a city where you have the largest and the best medical center in the world, and yet the life expectancy for some people in certain zip codes is 24 years less, we still have a lot of work to do. When Barbara Jordan spoke in 1976, she talked about the common good. Each one of us must share in the responsibility for upholding the common good. And the question is, why? Why was that so important to her? I believe because each of us is a member of this national community that she spoke about, with a national purpose, striving for a common destiny, which I believe is seeking a more perfect union. That should challenge all of us to act and advocate for causes and purposes that benefit more than ourselves. And sometimes, in fact, many times, we are called upon to sacrifice our individual interests for the greater good, the common good. And we don't have to go further than the Pledge of Allegiance itself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, and I underscore united, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, which means not divided, with liberty and justice for all, for everyone. That's the perfect union. That is the total sum of all of its parts. Houston is the most diverse city in the country. But diversity doesn't mean very much if you are separate, segregated, and apart. The question is, can we be diverse and inclusive at the same time? And Associate Dean Joseph, that's why it's important to talk about diversity and inclusion and equity. Because if we are not inclusive, being diverse is simply a descriptive term. But being inclusive means we have been intentional. It's just like my daddy said when I grew up, and we come out of a large family, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a table that could only hold 5 at a time. And my daddy would say to all of us, I want everybody in the house at dinner time. And only 5 could sit at the table at a time. So he would say, 5 of you can come in and eat. And the rest of you will wait. And there was no rushing. There was no fighting. There was no bickering. Because after a certain point in time, my dad would walk into the kitchen and he would tap us on our shoulder. And he would say, you 5 have been at the table long enough. It's now time for the rest of the family to come to the table and eat. Because we all recognize that we will all have an opportunity to be at the table, there was no confusion. But anytime people believe they will be at the table and are entitled to remain at the table forever in a very diverse society, that does not work. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. So when we think about the theme for today's Barbara Jordan National Forum, the common good, we must remember her words and let them inspire us. We must refuse to remain silent on issues like social justice and economic equity, voting rights, climate change, and the movement to ban books and limit critical thought in our school. As contentious as they may be, when people remain silent, then we do a disservice to that common good. Martin Niemöller, a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany, said something that I believe holds true today. He said, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Our silence, the silence of people in this country, will work against the common good and everything that Barbara Jordan stood up. There comes a time when the good folk must stand up for that common good. Otherwise, we do a disservice to all of us. To build a national community, we must forge ahead with the understanding that we are as strong as our weakest link. And to build a national community, we must strengthen and lift those who are most vulnerable, like our children. When I was in the legislature, there were thousands of children who were not enrolled for the Children's Health Insurance Program. In fact, they restructured the program. And instead of parents being able to sign up their kids on an annual basis, they changed it so you had to sign up every 6 months because they knew that would prevent many parents from having their children enrolled. And so a few of us decided to change that system. 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans got together, became the authors of this bill, House Bill 109. Many people told us it would not pass. We forged this compromise that would add more than 130,000 kids to the Children's Health Insurance Program. And we made a pact amongst ourselves, these 5 authors. We said when the bill came to the floor, that even if amendments came from the left that I agreed with, that I would fight them off to keep the bill in a winnable condition, so to speak. And if amendments came from the right, my Republican author said they would fight them off, even though they were amendments that they pretty much agreed to. For 5 hours, we stood on the floor of the Texas House fighting off these bills. And I would say to my Democratic friends, I like what you're offering, but if I accept it, it works against getting this bill through. So we cannot sacrifice the good, seeking the perfect, and end up with nothing. For 5 hours, that was the message, that we cannot sacrifice the good, seeking the perfect, and end up with nothing. In the end, that bill passed by a large margin, and way more than 130,000 kids had access to insurance that they didn't have before. Why was that important? Important to me because sometimes we got to reflect on our own personal stories. I grew up not with any private health insurance. I grew up on the public health system. I had to catch that fofo with my mom, 2 buses to Ben Taub Hospital, getting there early in the morning and staying there all day long. And I said to myself, as a high school student growing up, it's hell to be poor. And so we have to bear in mind that what we do will impact the lives of not just a few, but impact the lives of so many. In 1999, still in the legislature, we created the System Benefit Fund in the wake of the deregulation of the Texas energy market. It provided a safety net to help low-income families and seniors pay their utility bills. We could not move forward at the mercy of the market if we did not protect those who could not protect themselves against rising prices during peak demand. it was fighting for the common good. As mayor, we are focused on building, Brianna, complete communities. 10 communities in our signature neighborhoods, revitalizing programs with a focus on quality neighborhood schools, affordable housing, quality parks and green space, business and job opportunities, educating and eradicating food deserts and energy poverty. Why? Because when I became mayor, I said I didn't want to be the mayor of two cities in one, cities of haves and have-nots. And so we wanted to invest in a real way in communities that had been disinvested for decades within our city. We fought for quality neighborhood schools because I remember when I grew up, they closed my neighborhood school because, they didn't think it was the best. And instead of investing in that neighborhood school, they closed it and bused me 18 miles one way, 36 miles a day. We have to fight for the common good. Through our climate action plan and resilience now plan, the city is better prepared today to deal with the shocks and stresses that come with the storm so we can move forward. Because there are some people who are living on the margins, like in the neighborhood that Barbara Jordan grew up in, that every time a storm comes, is trauma, need, and recovery. It's a constant state because climate change is real. And there are policymakers and legislators who put their heads in the sand. But Mother Nature is reminding us that if we don't do things differently, the storms will come with greater frequency, greater intensity, costing more. And people on the margins will constantly be in a state of trauma, need, and recovery. We have to act for the greater good. And then in Houston, we are taking a major initiative to address those who are homeless on our streets, because we recognize it's one thing to fill a pothole on the street. It's another thing to fill the pothole in human people's lives. And we have to fill that pothole in their lives. That's addressing the common good. And so we're living at a pivotal time. Right now, voting rights are under attack. In Harris County and other counties, the ability to vote by mail is threatened because an alarmingly high number of vote by mail applications and ballots have been rejected during this year's primary election due to the new rules created by Texas Senate Bill 1. I do not categorize that bill as representing common good, because let me tell you, gerrymandering comes in many forms, not just in gerrymandering geographical districts, but gerrymandering the electoral process. And we have to speak up and our voices have to be heard. And so we join with the Harris County judge to send a letter to the U.S. Attorney General Garland Merrick to ask the Department of Justice to use every legal option available to ensure that each eligible voter has their vote counted, irrespective of who they are voting for. We can talk about infrastructure, homelessness, public safety, and the economy, but the fundamental right to vote is at the heart of all of those issues, and it is in the common good. And it's in the common good that we must be active in this fight. Lastly, why is that so important? Barbara Jordan, in citing Lincoln, President Lincoln, in that 1976 speech said, "As I would not be a slave, I would not be a master. And whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy." Matthew 6:24 teaches us that for the common good, we must seek what is best for everyone, beginning with the least, the last, the lost, the most vulnerable, and the most forgotten. Like Barbara Jordan, each one of us must have the courage and the fortitude to use our voice, our education, our access, our station in life as a voice to do different. This is the essence of public service and helping others. And she would say, equality for all, privileges for none. But I believe Dr. King, Martin Luther King, said it poignantly. In the speech that he gave before he was assassinated, the mountaintop speech, he said this: let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness, which means you have to look beyond yourself and look at what impacts others. He went on to say, the question is not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor? The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, he says, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? So today, let us rise up with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination, and let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And what I will say to you, it starts with us each doing our part individually. One person can make a difference. And you need not be old to be wise. You can be young and impactful. One person, no matter how young, can make a difference. But you have to decide it's worth the price. One person can literally change the trajectory of this world. And that's why for Barbara Jordan, she talked about one person being willing to stand up and make an ultimate difference. And I'll close with this on a personal story because I know it's true. It was that maid who never learned how to drive, who never graduated from high school, who reared 9 kids, who signed my loan papers to go to law school, who never took a flight except one time to see her son graduate. And now one of those 9 kids is now the mayor of the 4th largest city in the United States of America. One person can make a difference. And so I leave you with just one question. What's your purpose? And are you prepared to be the next Barbara Jordan? Just put your own name behind it, and we'll see what happens as we watch you down the road. Thank you for having me today.